In this episode, we're going to take you on an amazing journey, an adventure through history, walking in the footsteps of some of North America's most famous paleontologists. We're going to learn why the Hill Creek Formation is so important, and see how an excavation begins. This journey will take us right to our own digs, and maybe, just maybe, we'll make a little history ourselves. It's our first full day in the field, and we're itching to find some fossils. Who knows what might lie beneath the next inch of sand? I'm Walter Stein. I've been digging dinosaurs now for over 20 years. I've worked on skeletons from Texas to Tokyo. Specimens I've found, excavated or prepared, are in museums all over the world. I even have a dinosaur named after me. This is my family. My wife Heather, who's always got my back. My two crazy kids who always keep me on my toes. And this is my crew. Jason, Becca, David, Dan, and a whole other cast of crazy people. You might even see a dog in here somewhere. This is our company, PaleoAdventures, and there's bones in them there hills.
I get to sit up front?
Mm-hmm.
Sit up front. Good morning. Good morning. You ready to rock and roll? Yeah. Good. First day of field season. We are en route. You are on camera. Alright, so the game plan is pretty simple. We got to get the tooth draw and tooth draw west. We've got to offload some gear, get the canopy square, make sure everything's ready for the tour guests. Then we're going to look around tooth draw west, and see if there's anything cool and eroding out. Whoa, is that a snake? Yeah. Dead?
I don't think so, kid. Yeah, he's dead.
Alright, so after lunch, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to climb up to this new site that I found last year. It's called Do 22 North. It's one of the highest, stratigraphically highest sites on the ranch that have confirmed dinosaur bones. And there's some really cool material coming out of there, Struthiomimus, and as well as Thessalsaurus material. We found several claws that had weathered out. It's in some concretionary blocks, so it's going to be kind of tricky, but I want to go up and investigate that so you can test out your... Ooh, that's a cool sign. Well done. Well done, sir. Good fun. So anyway, we're going to get up there and evaluate that site, and this will probably be the only time I have a chance to even look at it, throughout the whole tour season.
Our field station is centrally located between our Wyoming, Montana, and South Dakota dig sites, which is nice, because we're in range of a lot of great fossiliferous country. It's also right on top of an old Morrison Jurassic Age dinosaur quarry that we occasionally get to play in from time to time. Today, however, we're heading to our main tourist quarries northeast of Newell, South Dakota, so we're still a little ways away from our digs. To get there, it takes quite a bit of time, but it does pass us through some great marine fossil localities and the cool little town of Belle Fourche, South Dakota. Belle might not look very big today, but back in its heyday it was the place to be. Full of cowboys and ranchers, sheep herders, gamblers, Native Americans, politicians, and outlaws. It was originally founded around 1890 by that infamous Deadwood lawman, Seth Bullock. Seth homesteaded a big ranch near the confluence of two rivers, the Belle Fourche and the Redwater. In fact, the name Belle Fourche actually means beautiful fork. The land used to be a stage stop where travelers could water their horses before the long journey across the prairie. Seth saw a lot more. He convinced the railroad to come through his town and gave away plots of land to anyone who promised to start a business. The railroad built Belle Fourche, and by the turn of the century it was one of the largest shipping points for cattle and sheep in the West. Belle was a bit of a wild town back in the day. In fact, the townspeople burned it down twice. Today, Belle Fourche is still pretty much a ranching and farming community. But tourism is also a big draw to this old west town. And one of the largest events in the entire Black Hills is the Black Hills Roundup, one of the largest and oldest rodeos in the West. It's also home to the Tri-State Museum, a cool little historical museum located right downtown and right next to the Geographical Center of the Nation Monument. We're just north of Belle Fourche and driving across some of the most fossiliferous country in South Dakota. But you won't find any dinosaurs here. This is marine country. This entire area was completely underwater some 70 to 100 million years ago. Off to the north is Belle Fourche Reservoir, the construction of which helped expose three phenomenal rock units, the Belle Fourche Shale, the Carlisle Shale, and the Greenhorn Limestone. These rocks are all approximately 90 million years old and represent an ancient sea floor. This shallow marine environment was called the Western Interior Seaway, and it basically split North America in two. It was bound on the east by the Appalachian Mountain Range and the Ozarks, which are very, very old mountain ranges, and bound on the west by the ancestral Rockies. The area is well known for its marine fossils. Locals have been collecting fossil fish, ammonites, and shark teeth here since the dam's construction back in 1917. The area around the reservoir is public lands, however, and unless you are an academic at the South Dakota School of Mines with a permit, it's illegal to collect here. So no digging. Back in 2007, on some private land adjacent to the reservoir, we found a very rare short-necked plesiosaur. This specimen was nicknamed Doc, and we are still trying to piece it back together again. Once assembled, Doc will be roughly about 14 feet long. It had a really long skull, full of lots of needle-shaped teeth for catching fish. Of course, today, we're not after marine reptiles. We're after dinosaurs. So I think we're going to have to keep going. Back in the 1870s, this would still have been Native American land. The Treaty of 1868 allowed the Black Hills and areas west of the Missouri to tribes like the Lakota, Dakota, the Sioux Nation, the Arapaho, and the Northern Cheyenne. It was largely unexplored by white settlers and dangerous to cross for many reasons. Unfortunately for the Native Americans, once gold was discovered in the Black Hills, it was hard to keep out the white settlers. In 1874, an expedition led by the infamous General George Armstrong Custer was dispatched to the hills to evaluate the claims of gold and survey the region. They left Fort Abraham Lincoln in North Dakota and came down the western side of South Dakota along the Little Missouri River. Most folks know that this was the first official discovery of gold in the Black Hills. What many do not know is that it was also the first time dinosaurs were discovered in South Dakota. Paleontologists would often attach themselves to various Western surveys, and the Custer expedition was no exception. Custer had invited one of the preeminent paleontologists of the day, O.C. Marsh, to join the survey. Looking to best his rival Cope, this was, after all, the Great Bone Wars. And during this time, Cope and Marsh were leading groups all throughout the West, trying to name more bones than the other one. Since Marsh couldn't go on the Custer expedition, he sent along one of his graduate students, a guy by the name of George Bird Grinnell. Grinnell followed with Custer's column and surveyed the land for fossils along with the expedition's geologist, Newton Winchell. As the expedition went south towards the hills, they would ride east and west of the column looking for fossils. On July 14th, Winchell and Grinnell made a big discovery: dinosaur bones. Grinnell writes, "Here we found the crushed and flattened leg bone of some enormous animal. A careful study of similar remains renders it highly probable that it was the femur of a dinosaur." That was the first time dinosaurs had ever been found in South Dakota. It wouldn't be the last. Today, we're hoping to make the next.
Alright, now we go off-road. This is the fun part. Yeehaw! Oh, sorry about that. Missed that bump. Oh. Still alive back there?
We'll be digging in the late Cretaceous 65 to 67 million year old Hell Creek Formation. The Hell Creek and its sister formation, the Lance Formation of Wyoming, represent an ancient floodplain that would have looked very similar to coastal Carolinas, Georgia, and northern Florida. It would have had a very warm subtropical environment, full of swamps, meandering river systems, and lowland forests. Over 650 different skeletons and skulls have been found in the Hell Creek, from approximately 27 different kinds of dinosaurs. Everything from very common dinosaurs like Triceratops and Edmontosaurus to the magnificent Tyrannosaurus rex. Another famous paleontologist of the day was John Bell Hatcher. Hatcher was a die-hard field worker who first described the land's formation in the late 1800s and finally formalized it in 1903. Between 1889 and 1893, Hatcher discovered the remains of over 30 skulls and 17 partial skeletons of the giant herbivore Triceratops. He did this while working for O.C. Marsh. With just a few hired men, a wagon, some mules, and an ox cart, he managed to get all of these specimens collected in that 4-year period and shipped back east to the Peabody Museum. An amazing feat. Hatcher may have been the first paleontologist to ever visit this ranch, long before it ever was a ranch. Apparently in 1891, Hatcher and associate Thomas A. Bostwick, on the direction of Marsh, were sent north to Slim Buttes to investigate rumors of a giant bed of mammal fossils. Hatcher wasn't too pleased. Not only was he very busy trying to excavate his Triceratops skeletons near Lance Creek, Wyoming, but he was also suffering from a terrible bout of rheumatism. Marsh was also notorious for sending money late, or not at all, and even holding back many of his field workers from other appointments. Hatcher wasn't very happy, but he went. The trip north took several weeks, first going east to the Pine Ridge Agency and then north to Slim Buttes. In correspondence back to Marsh, Hatcher complains the whole time, and once they reach the Slim Buttes, passing right by our digs on deer's ears, they are disappointed to find very, very few fossils. Hatcher and Bostwick return back to Wyoming, stopping in Hill City and Deadwood to send a quick telegram and a note. Our Slim Buttes trip, as I wrote to you, was a complete failure, he writes. I did not want to go on it, and wrote you against it, but you said go and I went, and it's over with. But really, it wasn't a complete failure. Apparently, at some point, he stopped long enough to collect a single bone from the deer's ears. A Thescelosaurus scapula, a shoulder blade. 24 years later, a paleontologist at the Smithsonian would find that bone buried in a box somewhere. His name was Charles Gilmore. And when describing the skeleton of Thescelosaurus, describes that bone and points to its discovery on the deer's ears. Why Hatcher never mentioned this to Marsh in known correspondence is a mystery. I guess the moral of the story is, never pull a paleontologist off an important dig, and if you do, make sure you pay the tab. Whatever the case, this near miss kept the dinosaurs of Deer's Ears Buttes largely hidden until the late 1970s. The ranch was homesteaded back in 1917, but it wasn't until 1978 until they realized that there were dinosaur bones out there. The landowner's first wife, who unfortunately is now deceased, was named Mary Ann Licking. Mary Ann was fascinated by fossils, and she suspected that many of the rocks that she and the family have picked up were dinosaur bones. She invited some paleontologists from the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology out to hunt for fossils, but they never seemed terribly interested. They would bring student volunteers and occasional geologists out to do some mapping, but it was sporadic, and they didn't collect much. Around 1985 or 1986, Mary Ann took the School of Mines crews to a new spot that she had just discovered. It had lots of tyrannosaur teeth, and fragments of bone all over the place. She called it Tooth Draw. The School of Mines crews went out there and looked at it for a day or two, collected one large leg bone, some microfossils, and a big T-Rex tooth. But they never really expressed any interest in excavating. Eventually, over time, the chief paleontologist's attitude at the School of Mines was, well, not so good, and eventually they were not invited back. The bones stayed put and remained largely unknown. Throughout the 1990s, a half-dozen other commercial groups visited the ranch. One even collected a duck-billed dinosaur skeleton around the corner, and another a Triceratops. But many of these folks proved to be hard to deal with, to say the least. In 2006, we came along, and we struck up a great personal and professional relationship. Leonard and the family invited us to take a look at the old quarry that no one wanted to dig. I said, "Well, what do you have there?" He replied, "Best if I show you," and started pulling out one T-Rex tooth after the next. I said, "Yeah, I think we want to work that." We've been digging here ever since. Tooth Draw is a complex channel lag deposit where multiple lenses of sand and gravel were laid down and compressed into sandstone and conglomerate. Some of it looks like it was deposited very, very rapidly, where there are boulders of mudstone tumbled in amongst all the larger bones. The remains of at least 20 different kinds of dinosaur, as well as bones from fish, amphibians, lizards, turtles, crocodiles, mammals, and pterosaurs have been found here. To date, several thousand elements have been collected, and more are found every year. Aside from the large quantity of theropod teeth like T-Rex and Nanotyrannus, Dakotaraptor, Caroraptor, Pectinodon, Troodon, there's also lots and lots of Thescelosaurus bones. Perhaps more Thescelosaurus bones here than I've ever seen at any one spot. Perhaps this is where Hatcher and Bostwick stopped way back in 1891. Looking for something more significant, something complete, anything odd, any complete tyrannosaur or raptor teeth, very important in the middle of the winter. It was way away from the wall, and it's covered in dirt, so it's hard to see it. This is very common here. We get a lot of these. This is a worn Triceratops tooth. We call these spitter teeth. Dinosaurs would replace their teeth over and over and over again, and so to find something like this is actually fairly common here. But this top part, this flat part, is the crown. Okay, and dinosaurs would lose their teeth frequently. They would replace their teeth, just like sharks. They're constantly replacing their teeth over and over again. Dinosaurs would do that as well. As this little plant-eating Triceratops was chomping on some veggies, it would eventually wear the top of that tooth down flat, and eventually it would become almost useless, and eventually would be popped out of the jaw, and a new one would grow up in its place. So teeth like this are very common. We get hundreds of these every summer. So this one will go in the collecting bag. Here's a good one right there. This is looks to be an Admonosaurus vertebrae coming out. It's a looks like a proximal caudal, one of the caudal vertebrae, mid to proximal caudal, and it's weathered out over the winter time. These fossils, if we don't catch them quickly, they're gonna weather out and eventually just fall apart to dust. You can see there's lots of little fragments of bone all through here. Some of them may go to that, but more than likely they go to other things. Here's another one sticking out. I'm not sure what that is. That could be turtle. There's fish scales there. Ooh, hey, take a look at this. There's a good one. This is a toe. I mean, not a toe. I'm sorry. This is an ungule, a hoof.
or a claw from an Dinosaurus. Get a close-up of that. This one, we didn't see this last year. This is just weathered out. We're just finding it right now. And you see they got these little porosity structures right here. This is where it would attach to the foot. So yeah, that's another good find. So we got a couple of duckbill bones that have weathered out that are really good. We've got one right here. I don't know what this is. This one looks like it's been weathering pretty good. Oh, hey, there's another one. There's another vertebrae right there. That's another, looks like another proximal caudal. But again, different levels. So probably not from the same animal. A lot of the bones in this site, it's an ancient river channel deposit, and so a lot of the bones have all been tumbled and broken. So some of these have traveled for miles before they finally came to rest here in these sandbars and gravel bars. So this toe here probably did not go to the same animal as that vertebrae or this vertebrae over here. And of course, in between all these bones of Dinosaurs and Triceratops, there's also a lot of weird things. Stuff that didn't travel very far, that got caught up in this these river gravels. Things like raptor material and tyrannosaur material. There's a lot of Thesalosaurus bones from this quarry. In fact, we get more Thesalosaurus than just about any other quarry I've ever seen. And the quality of those bones are much better, so it tells me that they haven't traveled as far and probably more of a local population of those animals. Whereas the Dinosaurs and the Triceratops probably came in from far upstream. So let's see what else we've got that's weathered out this year. Nice Dinosaurus hoof, or more appropriately called an ungule. This would have been off a foot ungule. Probably looks like the right pez. But very nice, one piece, good shape. Had a little bit of damage from weathering over this winter, but otherwise very nice piece. Tells us that Dinosaurus was here. Once the site was finally prepped, it was time to go investigate our mystery quarry, located way up high on the buttes. There's no way to get a truck up there, so we have to do it the old-fashioned way. Climb carefully. This is why you have to watch your step in the Badlands. A lot of times, erosion coming off those steep views cuts down into this overlying
Exploring the Badlands for dinosaur bones is often hazardous work, involving lots of hiking, lots of climbing, and occasionally lots of running for your life away from thunderstorms and hail and things like that. The ground is often treacherous, with lots of soft sedimentary rocks that can crumble very easily, making footholds and handholds difficult. There's rattlesnakes and scorpions and all manner of things that might want to sting or bite, so you have to keep your eyes on a swivel at all times. And never ever put your hand or your foot where you haven't looked first. Exploring for dinosaur bones requires a lot of hiking up and down Badlands, looking for that little speck of bone tumbling out of the hillside. 9 times out of 10, a prospect usually dries up and there's nothing there except for 1 or 2 isolated bones or teeth. But every once in a while, one of those prospects turns into something very, very cool. We're hoping that this site winds up being very cool.
Perspective layer. Found this at the end of last year while doing stratigraphic work. This lens up here, this orangey, sandy, gravelly lens here, is where most of the bone seems to be coming out of. It's a pretty extensive unit, goes all the way under the mountain, shows up on the other side. Although this little area here, about 20 meters, has a high concentration of large bone fragments. Where we're going to start. This site is called Do 22 North. Stands for Deer's Ears West, 22nd strata north. We're going to dig in here, see if there's any more Thesaurus and Scrupulomymus bones, and cross our fingers, maybe there's a skeleton. Who knows? Has a whole bunch of bone fragments. That's turtle. I see more bone fragments down there. Oh, what's that? That's something interesting. Every time we let stuff like this erode out for a while, new stuff shows up. This is part of a vertebrae. Part of the neural arch. Right here is a pre-zygapophysis. In front of it. So, that's interesting. So we got all kinds of stuff here in the debris pile. This is a turtle. I found Tyrannosaur teeth up here. Nanotyrannos T-Rex, the troodontid tooth we found up here. So we have another poly-specific bone bed. That means there's more than one animal in it, more than one species, one genus. But if you look down in this flow trail, you'll see little bits and pieces of bone coming down. So we're going to start by William. We're going to have you pick up some of the float down here, and then Jason, I want you working on the right side. You're going to cherry pick and see that big boulder right there. Working this blue bucket out into that arm piece of another vertebrae. All this started way up there. Oh, let's get at her and see if there's something else in there.
There are no guarantees when it comes to hunting dinosaurs. A site may look great on the surface, but once you begin digging, could either play out very quickly or prove nearly impossible to excavate. Most skeletons that are found are very fragmentary, consisting of only a small percentage of the bones. You have to remember that small dinosaurs have small bones, and these weather very, very quickly. Millions of years ago, scavengers would have been chewing up the carcasses of these animals, and streams and rivers would carry lighter bones downstream. So, the bones tend to get pretty well broken up before they ever became fossilized. And then once they do become fossilized, they weather much faster than larger bones. So, if you find more than 20% of an animal, you're doing pretty well. Large dinosaurs like Triceratops and Hadrosaurs and things like that are known from a lot of skeletons. People have been digging out west for over 130 years, and so many of these dinosaurs are quite common. What we're looking for are the smaller, rarer dinosaurs, things that didn't preserve quite as well. So far, the nice thing about this site is that it has the right kind of small, rare dinosaurs that we're looking for. When it comes to Thescelosaurus, paleontologists have discovered only 42 partial to complete skeletons and skulls. When it comes to the Hell Creek ornithomimid, there's even less. Only 18 fragmentary partial skeletons are known. So every skeleton, isolated bone, or random tooth is important. Each one of them can tell us vital information about these dinosaurs' anatomy, taxonomy, variation, ecology, or behavior, no matter how incomplete.
We have Thescelosaurus vertebrae. I just pulled one out that was right here, and there's a neural arch right there, probably Thescelosaurus, and we've got something large up here. So far, it seems to be concentrated, and there's something else coming out here and over there. It seems to be concentrated in this one little area. There's not much out adjacent way. We lost William. William's gone. Oh, he's down there. He fell off the cliff. You finding stuff on that side too? Good. Need a new what? Okay, I'll get you a new bag. Possible? Did you find a possible? Vertebrae and what appears to be a skull element, but they're all concentrated right in here. Back of the brain case or something. Jason hasn't found squat. He's not yelling you whoopee. How's your headaches going? Found a lot of float at the bottom, so that means there's a lot of bone in here if we can find what layer where it's concentrated. Don't fall down the cliff, please.
If it were completely up to me, we would have dug all night long. There's something cool buried here, just under this dirt and gravel. I can smell it. But time has faded and the world has moved on. Our first tour guests are going to be here bright and early tomorrow morning, and there's still much left to do before the dawn. For us, it's time to move on. Today was a successful mission, and you can bet that we'll be back before the end of this summer to see what lies beneath these rocks.